Today is May 18th, 2022. My name is Joe Todd. This is an interview with Peggy Rovenstine in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Ma'am, where were you born?
Rapid City, South Dakota.
And when's your birthday?
June 30th. Do you need my year? 1962.
1962. Who is your father?
Don Hemstock.
Henstock?
Hemstock.
Okay. And your mother?
Donna Hemstock.
What was her maiden name?
Purington. Purington.
Okay. You go through school in Rapid City?
Did I what?
Did you go through school in Rapid
Yes,
City?
I did.
Graduated what year?
1980.
1980. Who is your favorite teacher?
Probably my 6th grade teacher, Mrs. Neal Tipton.
Why was she your favorite?
She was very innovative at the time. She believed in different teaching methods, which didn't always go well with parents, but the kids loved it. She was probably ahead of her time. She just was very energetic and did a lot of things that was not traditional at that time.
Yes. What did you do for recreation in high school?
I worked a lot, and I hung out with the church youth group, regular things.
What did you do after high school?
Came to Bartlesville, Oklahoma, went to college.
And you came to Bartlesville for
Oklahoma Wesleyan University, yes.
Okay. Why did you come to Wesleyan University?
Because I was raised Wesleyan, and my mother said all of her children would go at least 1 year to college at a Wesleyan school. So, and when I got here, I thought, you could go longer to college than 1 year, even though that's what my mother always said. So,
What did you study at OWU?
I started with accounting. I went to school for 2 years, and on the 3rd year, I was offered a job at the college, which would pay for my schooling. So I started going part-time, working full-time, started having a family, and then did not finish my degree until between child 2 and 3, and I got my management and human resources with a minor in accounting then.
Okay. Where did you meet your husband?
At the college, Oklahoma Wesleyan.
Yeah. And when did you get married?
We got married in 1983.
1983. Okay. What work were you doing at the college?
I was a accounting clerk.
Okay. And how many students were at the college at that time?
Oh, I don't think I could tell you that.
Okay.
It was pretty small.
Yeah. Okay. Beautiful campus.
Yes, it's gorgeous, and it's grown a lot since then.
Yes. Now, when did you become involved in the group home project?
So when my daughter was born, I was going to be a stay-at-home mom. That didn't last very long. I was very bored. And we lived in apartments next to the Cherokee house, which was one of the group homes. And we were managing the apartments and living there, and the residents that lived at the group home would see me outside with my daughter, and they loved babies, so they would come out and got to know me and my daughter, and every night would ask me to take a walk around the block after supper. So we would walk every night, and it's just I got to know the residents. They gave me a tour of the group home. One day I'm outside, and Ivory sees me, who was the director, and she walks over and says, "I need a house manager. Are you interested?" And I'm like, "No, I'm going to be a stay-at-home mom." She says, "You can bring your daughter with you. I don't care. I need someone. My house manager is leaving for California, and I don't have anybody." And I'm like, "Well, let me talk to my husband." So it went from there. I started working. I raised my children in the group home.
Let me ask a question.
Okay.
What is the group home?
The group home was a home for people with developmental disabilities. Once they reached 18, it was a place for them to live and learn independent life skills. They would go to job at the workshop. At that time, it was called the workshop. Now it's employability. And they would learn to cook and clean. They had chores. They'd have their rooms. At that time, there was 10 people in the group home. It was very full, very crowded. And I'm going to say about 5 years in, they said that all group homes needed to be downsized to 6. So as attrition happened, people moved, or we found other housing for them, then we went down to 6,
Okay.
which was a better number.
Now, what does the house manager do?
The house manager would come in after they got off work at 2 o'clock. This was my schedule. At 2 o'clock every day, I'd go into work, pick them up from work, bring them back. We would, 1 week you could be the cook, 1 week you'd be the cleaner as a residence. 1 week you would set the table, 1 week, they all had their jobs. And so the cook of that week would plan the menu the week before, and we would cook the meal together, make sure that, serve everyone. Then we would do the cleaning, make sure the chores were done, and just socialize. We'd do activities with them. We'd go walking. We would go out to eat once a week, concerts, exercise, whatever came along we would do. Spend the night there, sleep there. Next morning, get up, get them breakfast, and get them off to work. And then my off time was while they were at work.
Okay.
So basically, when I first started, it was called the house mom. I was the mom to everybody in the home. Even though most of them were older than me, I was still the mom.
Now, you said this is Cherokee House?
It was the Cherokee house at that time, which was 511 Southeast Cherokee. And it was a 3-story home that had been made into a group home.
Okay. What's your average day in the group home? What do you do? The time you get up and the time you go to bed, what do you do?
The average day was, like I said, it started at 2 in the afternoon, which meant picking them up, bringing them back, preparing meals with them, making sure chores were done, making sure anyone that had doctor's appointments got to their doctor's appointment. Usually I had a second helper in there that would help me with those. Giving medication out. Making sure they had certain days to do laundry, making sure that person got their laundry done that had that day, because it put everybody off if they didn't finish their laundry. Just kind of making sure things were running smoothly and taking care of business and being organized. Organized was the big thing, because most people with developmental disabilities like organization, and they like routine, and made sure the same thing happened over and over. If we went for ice cream on Friday, it turned into every Friday you go for ice cream, because that was the routine. You didn't break that. But the only way we could do ice cream is if everybody walked on the treadmill every night for 30 minutes. That needed to, not everybody, but it was a bribe for working out. So
Okay,
anyway.
So your day started at 2 o'clock in the
Started 2 o'clock in the afternoon. Then I would sleep there at the group home. My family would be there. We would sleep there. So someone was in the house overnight. Next morning, get up, get everybody ready, get them breakfast, and get them off to work. And my off time was like 8:30 to 2 every Monday through Friday. And then there was another person that came in over the weekend, so I was off on weekends.
Okay. What type of disability did the people have? The main
I had someone with cerebral palsy. I had all of them walked. I did not have anybody in wheelchairs or at this home. Everybody walked. I had 4 or 5 Down syndrome people. I had some that had brain damage at birth. I had cerebral palsy. I think that was about it. Mainly Down syndrome, I think, was the biggest group I had.
Now, they came to the house when they were 18?
They could come when they were 18, yes.
Okay. Because I was understood, like at Hissom, at 18 they aged out, they had to leave Hissom.
Right, no, this was a place for them to be able to go once they turned 18. ARC Group Homes was started by a group of families in Bartlesville that decided there was, well, you want the way back history, they started it because there was no education for their children. And so they started it so they could provide a school for their children. Then they started the group homes so they had a place for their children to go once they turned 18. If the group home wasn't there, they would have stayed at home, and most of the parents were like, I need a place for my child to go because they either worked or they were getting elderly. And so they started the group homes, the group of families, to make a place for their children to live. So,
Who funds the group homes?
the group homes were funded by the state of Oklahoma and by donations from people in the community.
Okay. Now, do most of the people in the group homes, do they work at Employability?
Most of them do.
Okay.
They started a program, Employability started a program to put people in the community, to work jobs in the community. And so I did have a few people that worked in the community. I had a lady who worked at Walmart for probably 12 years or so. I had someone that had worked at Boulevard Pharmacy a couple of times in different places in the community that would give them jobs to do. The lady that worked at Walmart, she folded towels for Walmart and worked in the home goods section. Putting things on the shelves. If they worked at Boulevard, a lot of times it was cleaning and straightening up the shelves and different things that they could do.
Okay. Now, tell me again the chores each person did in the house.
Well, there was a list, a chart on the wall, and each week the names changed, but it was cook, cleaning, which was the kitchen, not the most popular job, cleaning the bathrooms, very not popular job, vacuuming, dusting, trying to think what else there was. That was pretty much it.
Okay. Now, who did the actual cooking?
Well, it depended on the resident. I had some residents that were very, very good at, cooking the meat, the ground meat, usually browning the meat and putting together a casserole if you stood there and gave them directions. I had some that their best job was to hand you the potatoes as you peeled them. It just depended on their level of what they could do. And so everybody did a little different. I had one lady that was actually a very good cook, and she just needed supervision, and she did a lot of it, but mostly it was me and my assistant usually.
Okay. How many group homes are in Bartlesville now?
Right now there are 3, and then there is one ICF DD, which stands for Intermediate Care Facility for the Developmentally Disabled. And we opened it up, it's the Jacqueline House on Jacqueline Lane, and it was opened because the state quit funding group homes. And it is under the Nursing Home Care Act, and it is funded by them.
Okay.
So it's a different funding, but it's similar to a group home. It has 10 people in it.
Okay.
So 3 group homes, 1 ICF.
Yes. Now, what did your husband think about you working in the group home?
Oh, he loved it. Because he hung out there all the time.
Yeah.
He came and stayed there, and it was our home. Our children grew up. In fact, my mom still has the story of my daughter fell and skinned her knee and was crying, and instead of running to me, she ran to one of the ladies and had her comfort her. My one daughter knew how to tie her shoes because one of the ladies taught her how to tie her shoes. I didn't have to, she did it. And there was another, when my middle child, she would get into trouble with one of the residents. I would go in and find out they were eating the toothpaste, or they had gotten bath bombs and they were sitting there opening all of them, and they were all over the bed. So, they could get into trouble together too. No, my husband loved it there because he loved the residents. He got along well with them. It was our home.
Yes.
It's where we raised our children.
Now, how long do you work at the group home, Cherokee?
I worked at the Cherokee house until they opened the Wyandotte house, which they sold the Cherokee house. It was getting difficult for the residents to climb the stairs and everything. They were getting elderly. So they built one on the Wyandotte Street, and it was 1 floor. And I'm sorry, I don't remember the year they built that, but, and then I worked there for about 3 years and then moved into the office. So the actual working as a house manager, I probably did that about 20 years and then worked in the office about 6 years, total 26 years.
The office at Employability?
Yes, at that time it was not there, but
Yes,
yeah.
yes, yes.
Yes. I worked in the office and I was what was called a program coordinator, and I oversaw all the group homes, or some of the group homes, and their staffing, and by that time we were opening up the independent homes in town from the Hissam closure.
Yes. Okay. Tell me about Employability, or it was called ARC at one time, wasn't
It was called the workshop for years.
Okay.
In fact, I sometimes still refer to it as the workshop. I could not tell you how long it's been there, but I think it was there even before the group homes. And it has always been a place for people to go and have a job and an activity during the day. They would get contracts through town to do different things. I remember one time, Jane Phillips used to have the little pink basins with the pitcher in it and the cup in it when you'd come, and it was all wrapped up. At one time, they made those at the Employability. I mean, that was years and years and years ago. They made the little packages that they passed out at Jane Phillips. They had another job where they put ball bearings into wheels for roller skates. That was years and years ago. They did a job, they did something with film canisters, put the film in the film canisters or something. I can remember that. I'm trying to think they just did little jobs like that. And then the thrift store, it was always sorting the clothes, hanging them up, pricing them, putting the furniture out, that kind of thing. The thrift store was a great place for them to develop job skills and do things.
Now, what was your main duty overseeing the group homes?
Keeping track of the staff, hiring staff, making sure everything was being done, reports that were required by the state, because of course we were state funded. Overseeing the residents, making sure they were getting their doctor's appointments in and getting their medication correctly, that kind of thing.
How long did you work there?
In the office, I think about 6 years.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what do you do now?
Well, after leaving the group homes, I went into nursing home administrator. I became a nursing home administrator, and I did that for many years. I just, in the last 2 months, switched jobs, and I am actually working at Arvest as a teller. It's a new career for me. Just needed a change from long-term care for a little while. COVID changed the world.
Yes, yes. How long can a person stay at a group home?
Till they pass.
Okay.
Yeah.
So there's no age limit at the group?
No.
Okay.
As long as we can provide the care that they need, they can stay there. If they had, there were several that went on hospice and passed away there. As long as we could provide the care is the big thing. If they got where the group home staff could not provide the care for them, they would probably have to go elsewhere. In fact, one of the nursing homes that I was at, we did get one of the ladies that had been at the group home, and she was getting to be too much care. She needed more nursing care.
Yes.
And so she came to my nursing home, and I was able to help take care of her
Yes.
there, which was wonderful.
What's your best memory of the group home?
Oh my goodness. There's so many. I don't know. I'd have to think about that one. I will come back to that question.
Okay. What's your worst memory of the group home?
Probably losing them. It's hard.
Yes.
Yeah, they were my family.
Yes. You get attached to it.
Oh, yeah.
Yes. So the youngest is 18.
Yes.
And
at
then
18.
the oldest is until.
I would say 50 to 60.
Okay.
Yeah. one of the things they realized is the Down syndrome people, most of the people I had in the group home, they said they would not live past the age of 18 to 19. Most of the parents were told that. And, sorry, you really kicked it in here. So we were seeing people living longer, and what they found is people with Down syndrome, and this is what I was told by a neurologist, is they have the gene for Alzheimer's. And so almost all these people with Down syndrome were becoming, if they lived past 30 or 40, they were seeing dementia. And so that's what most of them passed from, was dementia, not the Down syndrome, even though the Down syndrome is usually the cause of their dementia, because, and that's something new that had never been seen before because they'd never lived that long. So that was very interesting.
Because I was told that Down syndrome is an extra chromosome.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Is there any treatment for Down syndrome? Is there anything they can do for Down syndrome?
No, not really. There are things that they can do to make their life better, and this was something that they have not done. With most of the residents I took care of, they had not done that. But one of the things is they have a very large tongue, making it very difficult for them to swallow, causing pneumonia and everything. And they actually can cut their tongue down now, which sounds horrible, but they can make their tongue where they can swallow and talk better, and so that helps. And one of the things is the strong antibiotics they have now, and that's why Down syndrome people are living longer, is usually they died from infection because they have a suppressed immune system, and so they gave them very strong, the antibiotics now could take care of most of their infections that they had and that they couldn't take care of at one time.
Okay.
And so that's one of the reasons they were living longer. And so they can do things like the tongue, but there are different levels of Down syndrome. You can find your high functioning Down syndrome that actually does very well and can do pretty good in school. And then you have your very low level
Yes.
Down syndrome people. So it just depends on the person.
Okay. How did the group home change from the first time you went in until you left?
I'm going to say the size, because when I went in, we had 10 people, and then the state, we're only funding group homes with 6 people, so they downsized to 6 people. Terminology, that was always interesting to me. When I started, they were called, it was mental retardation, people with mental retardation. Then it was developmental disabilities, and then, there was always different terminology. When I started, I was a house mom, and then it was, these are adults, you're not a mom to them, and so I became a manager. Terminology was huge. And then when I started, there was no training required for employees that worked in the group home, and then they said, you know what, we need to have these people trained. And so they started giving us training and providing training, which was very smart. We needed that. So the training requirement was good. They started having jobs out in the community. That was a new thing. When I first started there, everybody worked in the workshop, but it was unheard of working in the community. It was also interesting that each person had like a care plan of things they were going to work on that year. Some of it might be, we're going to work on making your bed every day. Some of it might be, you are going to learn to cook tuna casserole or something, which was interesting because every time that person cooked, we had to eat tuna casserole whether we liked it or not, because it got really old after a year. But so it just, it ranged on their ability of what
Yes.
their care plan was. And I think they realized that some of those care plans were kind of silly. Making tuna casserole every week that you cooked was rather a silly plan. And so they started changing what care plans looked like and what was required of that. And it was interesting because sometimes they would say, oh, we're going to do this. And then down the road, oh, we're not doing that anymore. That's a terrible thing to do. And I'm thinking, well, that's what we did 5 years ago. And what we didn't do came back around sometimes. So it was very interesting. People that got tired of me working there, sometimes would be like, just go with it. Don't complain. We've done this before.
How about family visits?
We have very active families in some of our homes, in some of our residents. We had some families that did not visit their family, their children at all. We had some families that came all the time. Then we had some that came every weekend. It was very organized, So I'm going to say because the ARC group homes was started by families in the community, we had very, very active families that stayed. One of the things that when I first started, they would have garden parties, and so all the families would come and do the yard work. We didn't hire it done or anything. Well, as the family started aging and everything, they decided we better start hiring someone to do the yard work because they were getting tired of coming and doing yard work. But that was always fun. We'd make ice cream and everything, and everybody would come and have yard parties. But so we had very active families.
Now, being state funded, did you have religious services?
Oh, yes. Yeah. A lot of them went to church. First Baptist Church was very instrumental. They set up a Sunday school class for the residents, and every Sunday they would go, and Ruth Matthews, I think was her name, was a Sunday school teacher for years and years and years. And they would go to the First Baptist Church, and then one year I had someone say, you know what? I think I'd like to go to the Nazarene Church. So they broke away from the Baptists and went to the Nazarene Church, but they were very involved. I had a group, the Kiwanis, when they were active and involved, they did monthly birthday parties. We had a great time when they would do things. We had another group, I cannot remember the name of that group. Yeah, it was a women's group here in town. And they would come in and do bingo parties about every quarter. That was always fun. So yes, the community was very, very, very involved at that time when I first started. I think there was less and less of that, partly because most of the people that were very active and involved were starting to age. But
Yes. How did you celebrate Christmas?
We had huge Christmas party every year, decorated like crazy. Jody Kerberger was huge about, she'd bring in all the decorations in fact, she provided all the art for the group home. She was very good about that. But we had a huge Christmas party. We decorated beautiful, but all my residents went home at Christmas time, so we pretty much shut the group home down at Christmas time.
Okay. Thanksgiving?
Same thing.
Same thing.
Yeah.
July 4th?
Most of them went home. We had a few that stayed because their families lived out of town, and so we always went to Sooner Park for the fireworks. And when they found out we were having so much fun, they would come back. Everybody that was at home were like, hey, they're having more fun at the group home. And they'd all come back and we'd have a van load. They never stayed because we had too much fun.
How'd you, what kind of vehicle did you have to move the people around?
We had a 15-passenger van.
Okay. Who supplied the van?
ARC would purchase them.
Okay.
And then, they were always purchased.
Okay.
And then in my last few years, there was some donations that we would get, and you keep track of how often you drive them and all that, and they gave you vans for free through the state of Oklahoma. And I can't remember who that was through, but we did start doing that. I don't know if they're still doing that or not. But they were all purchased by ARC before then. And we would drive those vans to death before we'd get another one.
Yeah. So, at the Baptist church, they would go to the Baptist church for Sunday school?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And do you have services at the group home?
No, they'd go to the Baptist church.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Again, what's your best memory?
Oh my goodness. I would probably say the parties that we had.
Yes.
We I mean, growing up Wesleyan, I was not allowed to dance. It's not that way anymore, but that was how I grew up. So I go to these group homes and they have these huge parties and they love to dance. And I learned right away that I hurt feelings if I said, no, I don't dance, because I didn't know how to dance. So I learned to dance. And so learning to dance with all my residents was a great memory. That was probably a great memory. My mom's like, you're doing what? I said, I'm dancing, Mom. She goes, how do you know how? And I said, they're teaching me. I had one guy that taught me how to do the two-step. Not that I could do it, and I would never do it in front of anyone but the residents. But yes, probably the parties and the dancing.
Yes, yes. Anything else you want to talk about the group home?
I can't think of anything. I think that covers it.
Yes.
Great, great memories.
Yes.
In fact, my daughter is a writer, and she has been trying to write a book on her life in the group home. One time, my kids and I were out walking, and it was when she was an adult, and we walked by this house, and I said, I used to take you to Girl Scouts at that house. And she says, no, Mom, I never went to Girl Scouts there. And I'm like, yes, you did. That was where you went to Girl Scouts. She says, no, Mom, that's where the ARC people went to Girl Scouts. And I said, oh, that's right. I used to take them to Girl Scouts there. And she says, yeah, you're mixing me up with clients again. But that was so much a part of our lives. I mean,
Yes.
My kids grew up in it. My son, who was in kindergarten when I moved into the office, doesn't remember it as much as my girls, but my girls grew up there. And I will tell you, when my daughter started driving, that was very, very hard on the residents, because I started there when she was 16 months old. And they all talked about driving someday, which none of them were going to be able to drive, but they always said, someday I'm going to drive. And then all of a sudden, this girl that they watched grow up started driving, and that was very hard on them. I remember her driving, and they were like, she gets to drive. But yes.
Ever have any non-Christian Jewish people?
No, we didn't.
Okay.
Not anybody. No, we never had any of that.
Okay.
I mean, we had a few that were like, I'm not going to church,
Oh,
but that was about it.
or a
So-
agnostic or whatever.
No, we never
Yeah.
had anything like that
Yeah.
in our home.
Yes. Well, ma'am, this is an excellent interview.
Well, it was fun. Reliving things.
Again, anything else about the home you want to talk about?
I can't think of
Any-
anything.
Any resident stand out in your memory?
Well, Paul and Ivory's son, Mike,
Yes.
he was ornery as all get out. He kept me on my toes. But he was also loving and wonderful.
Yes, yes. And they told me he had dementia.
Yeah,
Yes.
he did. But he always remembered me.
Yes, yes.
So, yeah.
Okay. Well, again, I want to thank you. And again, this is May 18th, 2022. My name is Joe Todd. This has been an interview with Peggy Rovenstine in Bartlesville, Oklahoma. Thank you.
Thank you.